Hi, I'm Jay Editon.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of comics' greatest superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week, we're going to be talking about the books of April. I keep on saying August. April 12th, 2017, including 2 brand new Resurrection titles. But first, we have an announcement.
Indeed we do. So we have been doing Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men for about 3 years at this point.
And we are taking a break. We are going to be taking a 3-month hiatus from the podcast, the video reviews, everything attached. The podcast hiatus will start at the beginning of May.
So I think we have 3 more podcast episodes for you.
But this is going to be the last episode of the video reviews until August, because I am moving to New York tomorrow.
Freaking tomorrow.
Well, today as you watch this.
True,
tomorrow as you record it. And, it made a lot of sense to us to record out in advance on the podcast, so we'd have content through the end of the month. With the video reviews, the move is much more of sort of a hard stop.
Marvel won't give us stuff early. It's very sad.
It's tragic. I mean, they gave us X-Men Gold early.
That's true. For the most part, Marvel won't give us stuff early.
Yeah, so this is for both of us going to be just kind of a much-needed break. It's going to give us time to figure out cross-country recording logistics for both audio and video, rather than having to scramble to figure that out while moving and relocating and getting settled in New York. And also, we're going to get to sleep in on Saturdays sometimes, which is really exciting.
A strange concept.
But we will definitely be back in August.
Yes, no question.
Yeah, and this is largely time for us to regroup and hit the ground running when we do.
And there will be some other stuff going on in the interim. And,
Miles has a really cool project in the works. I mostly have a cross-country move in the works, but you tune into the podcast from on what he's going to be up to, because it's
very
it's
excited
neat stuff.
So we'll have a little more information in the episode of the podcast. It will be coming out the weekend after this episode goes live, so just a few days later.
And in the following several. And I should say, too, if you're a Patreon subscriber, I'm just going to say this now because I feel like otherwise we're going to get a zillion questions. We are going to be putting the Patreon on pause for May, June, and July, so you're not going to get billed in any of those months. It'll go back on August 1st.
Yeah, so no need to unsubscribe or anything. You won't be charged. Please don't unsubscribe. Please come here. Please return when we return. We'd love to see you. We can tell you about 90s stuff. It'll be great.
And I mean, the merch shop will still be up, and we'll probably be pretty active still on the podcast social media accounts. I'm not sure if there's going to be anything new going up on the blog or not. We're still kind of feeling that out. But yeah, we will be back then. For now, though, let's review some comics.
We'll start with this week's non-Resurrection book, Old Man Logan, number 20 run.
Miles, it's pronounced Resurrection.
Okay, this week's non-Resurrection book, Old Man Logan, number 21, written by Jeff Lemire with art by Eric Wynn and colors by Andres Mosa. So this one's interesting. I would have expected, since this is in fact the launch of a new storyline, as much as the last 2 issues just seemed like its introduction, for this to embrace the whole Resurrection branding and logoing and stuff like that, and it doesn't.
It's funny that you describe this as a new storyline. What it actually is sort of a greatest hits reel of older storylines.
Yeah, so this follows up from what happened in the last couple issues of Old Man Logan, with Logan going through essentially his own personal history through time, which is an interesting premise. I mean, there's certainly a lot of rich territory to be mined. I mean, geez, how many Wolverine stories have there been about the guy's past?
Yeah, well.
But unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to have the emotional resonance I was hoping for. Basically, we just don't seem to learn much about the character. There's not as much to make it personal as I would have hoped for. There's a lot of cool plot stuff.
It feels like a montage of things we've already seen. And the cooler ways you could spin that, playing off Slaughterhouse-5 and Old Man Logan has come unstuck in time and all of that. There's not much new here. There's not much that's brought to these stories that wasn't there the first 7 dozen times through them. That
said, Wynn's art, I really dig. This book has had a stellar run of artists, from Andrea Sorrentino to Felipe Andrade, and now to the new one for this arc. It's good stuff, but I specifically want to talk about the colors, because goddamn,
the colors are gorgeous.
Oh, they are so gorgeous. And they make the art just, twice as good as it would otherwise be, which would already be pretty good. So on a visual level, I dig it. It is, of course, a chapter 1, so I mean, if this is just setting up the premise, then maybe the storyline could go in awesome places. I'm certainly open to that. I do like the concept, but what this also is Jeff Lemire's last storyline on Old Man Logan. There's going to be a new writer taking over after Past Lives, after this storyline. Now, I
think it's time.
I think it is time. In All New Wolverine, we saw kind of an end of an era when Resurrection hit. I mean, Tom Taylor was still writing, but a lot of the plot lines were resolved, and it was sort of a fresh start. I'm hoping after Past Lives, that will be what we get as well, which means I'm also hoping that Past Lives feels like a fitting conclusion to this era. I did like Logan thinking to himself, the entire time I've been in this world, what I've learned is that I can't change things, and now here I am trying to do it, and it was a bad idea. So, it could be a follow-up to everything Logan's learned, all of his lessons, which he then ignored. It could be interesting. We'll see. I mean, first issue of an arc could go anywhere. Fingers crossed.
I am curious as to how it times out relative to the Weapon X book, but I think we'll get to that a little bit later in these reviews.
Ah, yes indeed. Speaking of, let's talk about some other books.
New this week is X-Men Blue #1, written by Cullen Bunn, drawn by Jorge Molina and Matteo Buffagni, and colored by Matt Milla. This is the book featuring the OG 5-time displaced teenage X-Men, and dang is it delightful.
It's kind of great, and it is not what I was expecting from Cullen Bunn.
No, it's a lot. Well, he is a fairly protean writer. He is one who is remarkably adaptable. And here what we've got is a really fun book. Like this feels like this is going to be the fun one of the new line, although we haven't gotten to Generation X yet.
True, there is that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost, so I mean, we talk a lot about art that feels cartoony, like, say Brett Blevin's art, or, to a degree Mark Bagley's art. But in this, the writing feels kind of cartoony. I mean, right down to there being a caption when Black Tom Cassidy shows up that describes him as the rogue with the brogue, which is really fun to say. I recommend you try saying it. You can pause and then come back. It'll be fine.
The caption use actually reminds me a lot of Matt Fraction.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah. That's a good point.
On X-Men and elsewhere.
But it's a different feel. I mean, these are not the same characters that Dennis Hopeless was writing or Mark Bagley was drawing. They feel a little different. They feel a little exaggerated in some ways or more restrained in others.
As is the case with every new writer and every new creative team looking at the characters. And these are versions of them that I'm enjoying very much.
Iceman seems a lot younger, which was interesting to me.
He does. And I think, I think it's easy to forget that at this point, the age difference would be a lot more pronounced because he is the youngest of the originals by a significant margin.
By I think a few years, yeah.
And I mean, if they're in their mid to late teens, that's going to be a bigger difference than it is with the adult versions of the characters.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I think is not something that's new here. It's something that's been largely overlooked previously.
So what do you think about the new direction for the team after what Hopeless did with All New X-Men with the road trip?
I think I am looking forward to an explanation of who their mentor of their relationship to their mentor, because while it's not a complete surprise, and we're not going to spoil this because this is a big reveal.
I mean, it was in the solicits, to be fair.
Oh, it was?
I think so.
Oh, well, still. Just
still,
in case.
Read the comic.
Yeah, read the comic. It's or, the internet or whatever. I think it's not something that comes organically out of, the end of their previous associations with the X-Men, or that we necessarily saw coming. And yeah, I'm interested in seeing how both sides of that equation ended up in one place.
I do like that, with the X-Men and X-Men Prime, with these X-Men rather, X-Men Prime, deciding very much to go do their own thing. This is definitely them doing their own thing.
It's someone's own thing. It is also, I love the new team dynamic, and I love watching the team feel out its new team dynamic.
With Jean being the leader, for instance?
Right, with Jean being the leader, and they're not being pushed back, but they're being a lot of ingrained habit. And that's an important distinction, and it's one that I think is critical to making her work as leader and to making her credible as leader, is having the resistance be habitual rather than deliberate.
Absolutely. I think that's one aspect of the characters that I feel works quite well, is Scott certainly respecting Jean as a leader, but forgetting perpetually that he's not, because he's used to always being him.
Being the one who default split-second decisions and, says code names on missions and all of that. But I mean, at the same time, none of them question that Jean is absolutely the one who should be leading the team, which honestly I think we've all known for a very, 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 very long time.
Can we talk villains?
We can talk villains. We are plumbing the Silver Age for these two. And
a lot of the Bronze Age.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I feel like it's really appropriate that their first fight is against a classic pair of villains. We've got Black Tom Cassidy and the Juggernaut.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Juggernaut fought these kids like early on in X-Men. And I also enjoy that part of why the Juggernaut's so pissed at them is because last he checked, Cyclops killed his brother. Cyclops killed Xavier, and Juggernaut has no idea that this is a different Cyclops.
Doesn't he? I think he might just be sort of generally anti-Cyclops at this point.
I mean, to be fair, Juggernaut is kind of a jerk. A jerk with a really cool new costume design, though.
Yeah. I had never, I know his costume hasn't changed, but I had never noticed just how intensely Batman Beyond Black Tom's logo is.
He's sort of an Irish vampire with a shillelagh.
He has plant powers, though.
Right. Just
He's not a vampire at all.
Just like plant vampires. Plant pyres.
So like Bunnicula.
Black Tom Cassidy is Bunnicula. You heard it here first.
Anyway, let's talk art, because, man, the art on this book is delightful. It's like a slightly more naturalistic Altiframantia.
Yeah, again with the cartoony, but it really, really works. I especially love the way Molina draws Jean Grey.
I mean, I love the way this art team draws everyone, and I love the way the colors interact with the line art. I love, the characters feel young, and there's an openness to this art that I think we've not seen with this batch, and not seen on an X book in a pretty long time.
It was interesting to me that we have a different penciler for the last few pages. I'm not sure if that was a deadline thing or what. I mean, the inks and the colors managed to make it feel not too much of a jump, but it was just weird,
Yeah, so the last few pages bring in a character who is not one of the original five, or their mentor, and is not currently working with them. Who is that guy? I have no frame of reference for that dude.
Okay, you're talking about the part that's like sort of after the ending of the issue?
Yeah, what I sort of think of as the post-credits thing.
So it seems pretty clear to me that this person in the wilds of Canada with 3 claws on each hand and blonde hair, I'm pretty sure that's Jimmy Hudson, the son of Ultimate Wolverine from the Ultimate Universe, which is unexpected. I mean, we've seen a couple Ultimate characters come over into the main Marvel Universe since Secret Wars, but I was not expecting him. Honestly, I wasn't expecting any of the Ultimate X-Men characters, so who knows? I mean, I'm open to it. I'm mainly just glad it's not regular Logan being resurrected, because let that dude stay dead. That was the most interesting thing that's happened with Wolverine in years.
You know what would be awesome?
What's that?
If someone brought in Ultimate Jean Grey as a villain.
Ultimate Jean Grey is a fascinating character.
She's a fun villain, too, when she gets to be.
I don't even know if villain's the right word for her.
Antagonist.
Yeah,
but,
there we go.
Man, I am not happy about Jimmy Howlett, because I feel like...
Hudson. This time it's Hudson.
Whatever. I am... That's how uninvested I am in him, okay?
You refuse to even say his name, right?
I'm Ron Swansoning it.
So he doesn't think that you like him.
Exactly. Or that I care. But no, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You have a Wolverine, Marvel. Stop trying to use every other potential dude Wolverine rather than your actual Wolverine in your books.
Laura even has a history with these specific characters. She used to hang out with them like very recently.
And I'm really, we've talked a lot about legacy. There's been a lot of conversation about legacy characters and diversity in the last few weeks. And I'm really frustrated with Laura's place in the X line, and with Marvel's handling of that. Because she is a character who has been around for a very long time. She is, I think, one of the legacy characters who makes the most sense as a legacy character, and whose legacy is most earned and most firmly established. She is stepping into very defined boots, and they are not letting her fill those shoes. She is not getting the package that goes with being Wolverine.
What Tom Taylor has said is that that's partially because she's busy in her own book.
Which
but
is
when
fine.
the hell has that stopped Wolverine?
It's fine that she's busy in her own book, but when people say Wolverine, I want them to be talking about the one who's in the most books. And I mean, right now, that's Old Man Logan.
By a wide margin.
And that's ridiculous. Like, this is not how you do it. You need, like, that support needs to be there. And I know this is not technically a Logan, but it still kind of feels like it's like, oh great, it's another dude who's stepping into that role.
What it comes down to is 3 claws bad, 2 claws good. It's like an Animal Farm, but not the allegory at all. It's not like Animal Farm at all, actually. That parallel's a bad parallel.
I mean, there are animals.
Jonathan the Wolverine's an animal. He's not in this book either, though.
There's an elk.
True.
Dead.
But yeah, as far as X-Men Blue, it's a solid book. As one of the 2, like, kind of front runners, as one of the 2 focus books of this iteration of X-Men, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this issue, and I'm really excited to see where it's heading.
And I'm also excited about the fact that Colin Budd said there would be more new characters, which means we could maybe get Laura, or, somebody who's not one of the 60s X-Men waspy kids. As much as I love those kids, don't get me wrong.
They're really waspy.
They are. So yeah, we'll see. This is a book that I think has a bright future, and it makes me really optimistic to follow that.
Yes.
And finally, we have our other new Resurrection book for the week, Weapon X #1, written by Greg Pak, with pencils by Greg Land, inks by Jay Leiston, and colors by Frank Darmada. So we weren't really sure what to make of this book. I mean, it's a premise that, at least to me, didn't sound too exciting. It's just another, like, lots of clawed people hanging out, which we've seen a lot of that, I'm just saying. With a writer I really have enjoyed, an artist I generally have not, so sort of a wild card, and it turns out it's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's an incredible standout yet, but I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of potential here.
This book is giving me a lot of what I wish I'd been getting for the last year and change from Old Man Logan.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Old Man Logan is the central character of the book. He's going to be a leader
At least so far.
Of the team. I mean, from what we know of where it's going.
Okay, so I do resent that implicitly, but...
Well, but yeah, this is not the same Old Man Logan we've seen in his own series, and honestly, it's not the same one we saw in the original Mark Millar series either. This one is more tired, not in the bitter way that the Millar one was.
He's just old.
He's just old, and he's smarter and more cautious and afraid sometimes and crafty. And I like reading about this character. Yeah,
Wolverine is such a scrapper that I think people forget that he's pretty smart and was basically a secret agent for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
This feels like the Old Man Logan version of the Wolverine who replaced all of Bruce Banner's luggage with purple pants just to be a dick in Madripoor.
It totally does.
He's that kind of jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And he's that kind of clever jerk. And... you know, like you said, tempered with age, and it's a blast.
It is, and I also really enjoy the pacing of this book. For most of the Resurrection books and most, comics in general, you have your, like, here's the creative team, here's the characters page right up front. With this, we don't have that until the plot goes in a very unexpected tonal direction very suddenly. Pak sells the hell out of that. Pak has always been very good at pacing and surprise.
He's a very cinematic writer.
Yeah, I think so. Not like in the Ultimates kind of way where it's just a bunch of 2-page spreads and stuff, but just in terms of really feeling like the pace is deliberate and steady and staccato when it needs to be and gradual when it needs to be.
Yeah.
And speaking of cinematic aspects, the visuals, I kind of like Greg Land's art here.
You know, we said that at the beginning of
Uncanny?
Of Uncanny, too.
I guess so, but I don't know if it's just Jay Leiston's inks or if it's just something with the colors, or if it's simply the fact that my favorite Greg Land art was in Greg Pak's Phoenix, Endsong, and Warsong series. Maybe it's just good alchemy between the writer and the artist. Maybe it's the inker. I don't know. But aside from one particularly egregious page that has X-23 looking terrible, the rest of it's, like, good and it fits the book, and this is actually one of my favorite visuals for Sabretooth that I've seen.
Yeah, he does draw a pretty good Sabretooth.
He does. I mean, he did an Uncanny as well, but this is, like, a different one. And so, I don't know. If I'm very open to it. Like, if this is the Land we're going to get for the rest of the book, then bring it the hell on. I feel totally okay about that. Your mileage may vary, of course, but for me, it worked.
No comment.
Okay, totally reasonable. But yeah, so far it's a slow start. I mean, of this new Weapon X team, or Anti-Weapon X team as the case may be, because apparently Weapon X is back and all evil again and stuff. We've really only had 2 of the characters actually interact, and a third one appear briefly, that being Lady Deathstrike. Mm-hmm. But a slow build is okay if the issue's engaging. This issue was engaging. I don't think it's as much, I'm not as gung-ho about it as I was for X-Men Blue, which was just, like, solidly great.
Yeah.
But so far, I will cautiously say this is pretty cool.
I mentioned that this book is giving me a lot of what I was hoping to get originally out of the Old Man Logan ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to elaborate on that a little bit because I think that this might be a book that would really appeal to people who wanted to like that series and had trouble really catching it.
I can see that.
Because this is a different version of Logan than you know, the 616 Dead Logan, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one who feels more distinct as a character and feels like he's grown and changed more since you know, his arrival in the 616 or whatever it is now than the Old Man Logan of Old Man Logan. He's much more engaging. He's a much more effective protagonist, and it feels a lot less like sitting in on someone else's therapy sessions.
I mean, I majored in psychology. I kind of like that feel about the Old Man Logan ongoing, I'll be honest.
It feels like sitting in on someone else's therapy sessions that I've seen like 60 times before. This doesn't feel like a rehash. It feels fresh, and it feels fun. And it's still got emotional heft, but I'm kind of ready for some of that.
I think so. So, yeah, that was one book I wasn't sure about down. We'll see how the other one, Cable, goes, I guess. Maybe that'll turn out to be surprisingly pleasant as well.
I mean, Cable can be pretty delightful.
Mm-hmm. It's true, but I don't know. We don't know a lot about James Robinson's run yet, so we'll have to see about that. So yeah, there you have it. Weapon X #1. Not bad. All right, those are our 3 for this week. Jay, what's our favorite?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. It's X-Men Blue #1. Yeah, it's a lovely book, bringing new voices and a new feel to a team we've seen a lot of and have a lot of love for. Great art, fun story, good read in the first issue, and intriguing going forward. What's our panel?
Our panel is actually also from X-Men Blue #1, and it's this one right here.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Mainly just because the sense of depth and the sense of motion implied by that depth is really enjoyable and really effective. The way the colors and the inks are much sharper in the foreground than in the background / below, underground? What would you call that?
It's just a really, really well-built panel.
I also really enjoy that Juggernaut's protestations get smaller as the words continue because he's falling, which is a nice little touch that adds to it. Very, very comic booky in this comic book.
I will say one thing I think this particular book could use is more organic feeling lettering. It clashes a little bit with the art, and this is one of those places where I think that's noticeable.
I can see that as well, but still, very fun panel. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here but would prefer it without our faces, check out our podcast, Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes for at least the rest of April and then from August on go up every Sunday at explainthexmen.com, also on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. What have we got for them this week?
So this week we have the first of our 3-part coverage of the Extinction Agenda, the big 1990 crossover, in which Cameron Hodge is a total jerk and manages to show up in like every significant scene. But more importantly, the X-Men, X-Factor, and New Mutants actually meet up and team up, like all of them, for the first time in so freaking long.
That podcast, these video reviews, and everything at explainthexmen.com are brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely listener-supported project. Those are the folks who keep us on the air and 100% ad-free. Our Patreon is going to be on hold while we're on hiatus, so again, May, June, and July. We'll be starting it up again August 1st. And if you want to join those fine folks in supporting what we do, you can do that at the link either above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it.
In the meantime, we will see you, well, rather, you will hear us for the next few weeks in the podcast. It'll be a little while.
And we'll see you in August.
And we will see you in August. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching our videos and supporting us and being part of this. We're still going to be reading X-Men. We hope you are too. We'll still be on the internet, so enjoy.
Yeah, for more on what we're going to be doing during the hiatus, listen to the next 3 episodes of the podcast and follow us on social media and stick around. The podcast social media accounts are still going to be active, and we'll give you updates as to what we're up to individually during that time.
Until next time, take care. We'll see you before too long.
I am so stupid tired.
I believe it, man.
I still have packing to do, too. I just, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to New York.
Okay.
I'll see you in a bit.